I know you guys watch these videos to relax or at bedtime, so before starting I would like you guys to subscribe the channel and let me know in the comments down below from where and at what time you are watching this video. Let's begin. I moved into apartment 6B in mid-October, a small unit in an aging building nestled between a liquor store and a pawn shop. It wasn't much, but it was cheap, and after my recent breakup, I needed a place, any place, to restart. The building had that stale, time-warped feeling, like it had been frozen in the late 80s and just left there to rot. My first night, I noticed the walls were oddly thin. I could hear everything from the next apartment over: water running, chairs dragging, footsteps, and whispering. At first, I thought it was just a nosy neighbor on the phone. But the whispering came at odd hours, 2:13 a.m., 4:41 a.m., never consistent. And it wasn't just soft talking, it was directed at me. I would lie still in bed, lights off, and through the vent near the headboard, I'd hear a hoarse voice whispering my name. Alex, Alex. Always in the same raspy tone, like someone trying not to be heard but desperately wanting to be. I knocked on the neighbor's door the next day, just to introduce myself and maybe ask if they were aware of the noise. But no one answered. An old woman from down the hall saw me and shook her head. "That place is empty," she said. "Been vacant for years." I laughed it off, figured she was confused. But when I asked the building manager, he confirmed it. No one had rented 6A in almost a decade. No electricity, no water. It was boarded up from the inside after the last tenant went missing. That night, the whispering returned. This time louder, clear. "You shouldn't be here, Alex." I jumped up, heart thudding, and pressed my ear to the vent. There was breathing. Heavy, slow breathing, like someone was right on the other side. I banged on the wall. "Who are you?" I shouted. The breathing stopped. Silence. Then a knock, 3 sharp knocks from inside the wall. I barely slept, and the next morning, I unscrewed the vent cover with trembling hands. Beyond it was a narrow shaft running between the apartments, dark and musty. Just enough room for someone to crawl through. I leaned in with a flashlight and caught sight of something that made my stomach lurch, a scratched-up Polaroid photograph taped inside the duct. It was a photo of me sleeping in bed, taken from above. I ran, packed a bag, and left the building that night. But before I walked out, I looked up at the 6th floor window. My window. The lights were off. But someone was standing behind the curtain, just barely visible, watching me. And I swear I heard the voice again, drifting faintly from above. "You can leave, Alex, but I'll follow. I always do." I checked into a motel across town, trying to convince myself I was just exhausted or hallucinating. But the next morning, I found another Polaroid in my bag. This time showing me at the motel check-in. Someone had followed me, watched me. I went to the library and found that 6 people had disappeared from that building over the last 30 years, all neighbors to apartment 6A. Each reported whispers. Each vanished without a trace. The last one, Lena Carson, called 911 days before she disappeared. Her final words were, "It's not human." That night, I recorded myself sleeping. The footage showed my phone moving by itself, and a whisper near the mic, "You can run, Alex, but I'm already inside." I found the only surviving tenant, Julian Morris, living in a psych ward. When I asked about 6A, he said, "It's not a man. He's older. The whisper is permission. Once you hear him, he's in." I stopped sleeping. The whispers were everywhere, through the walls, the TV static, even the silence. Then came the dreams, always inside apartment 6B, the walls pulsing like flesh, the voice calling me home. On the third night, I woke up outside the building. I had no memory of leaving. My car was still at the motel. The front door creaked open on its own, and from inside I heard it again. Not a whisper anymore, but a voice rising deep from the dark. "Come home, Alex. Come home. Let's move on to the next one." It was the kind of ad you only find when you're desperate. Room for rent, no deposit. Must move in tonight. Cash accepted. No questions asked. The address was handwritten and taped to a telephone pole near the bus station. My phone was dead, my wallet nearly empty, and I had no place to go. So I showed up. The house sat at the edge of town, buried in fog and trees like it didn't want to be found. The porch light flickered and a single bulb buzzed overhead. An old man answered the door without a word and simply pointed to the stairs. His face was gaunt, pale, and expressionless, like a mannequin that had aged badly. I followed the creaking staircase up to the second floor, where a narrow hallway ended in a door with a number carved into it. 13. It wasn't brass or painted. Someone had scratched it in by hand. Inside the room was plain. Bed, small dresser, one window. Clean but cold. Too cold. The moment I stepped in, the air felt heavier. I heard the door shut behind me, but when I turned around, the hallway was empty. The old man was gone. I tried to open the door, but the knob wouldn't turn. It hadn't locked. It had vanished. The door was just a flat wall now. That was the first night. The second night, I heard movement. Not footsteps, but a soft dragging sound like someone pulling their nails across the floorboards. I looked under the bed. Nothing. I looked out the window. Nothing but blackness. No street, no trees, no sky. Just void. The third night, I woke up to whispers. Not English. Not a language I recognized. But it was inside my head like 100 mouths mumbling just behind my ears. I screamed, but the sound didn't echo. It was swallowed by the walls. I slammed the window with a chair, but the glass rippled like water. On the fourth night, I found a journal wedged between the mattress and the wall. The pages were brittle and stained with something dark. No name, no dates, just desperate entries. He watches from the mirror. There's no fifth night. If you see your reflection blink, don't look away. I turned toward the mirror on the wall, and it blinked. Not me, the reflection. It smiled, slow and wide, like it was proud I had finally seen it. I grabbed the journal and smashed the mirror. Behind it was a hollow space filled with dozens of Polaroids. Each one showed different people, all in the same room, all screaming. The whispers started again. Louder now. Closer. The lights began to strobe, the room pulsing like a heartbeat. I tried to scream, but my voice cracked like dry leaves. My reflection was still moving in the shards of glass, even as I stood still. It reached toward me, and then everything went black. I woke up this morning in the bed, the journal gone, the mirror whole again. The door is still gone. The window still leads to nothing. But there's something new on the dresser. A Polaroid. Of me asleep. And under it, written in smeared ink, "You made it to the fifth night. Welcome to the house." The Polaroid sat there like it had always belonged, my sleeping face perfectly framed, head tilted, mouth slightly open. But I don't sleep like that. I never sleep on my back. My instincts screamed to leave, to escape somehow, but there was nowhere to go. The walls were seamless. The floorboards groaned with every step, even when I stood still. Then the phone rang. I hadn't seen a phone in the room before. But now there it was, an old rotary phone sitting on the dresser where the Polaroid had been seconds ago. It rang exactly 3 times before stopping. I didn't touch it. Couldn't. My hands wouldn't move. Instead, the journal reappeared, open this time on the bed. One fresh line written in dark red. Answer it next time or you'll trade places. Trade places? With what? I didn't want to know. But the mirror, still unbroken, shimmered again. My reflection smiled. I didn't. My reflection moved. I didn't. I backed away slowly, but the walls began to narrow. Literally. The room was closing in. The floor began to slope downward like it was breathing. I reached for the door again, hoping maybe it had returned, but instead I found another change. A crack had formed in the wall. A thin, jagged split right where the knob used to be. From it, something whispered, not words this time, but sounds. Crying. It wasn't human. It was too fast, too layered. A dozen voices weeping at once, like they were just behind the wall, begging to be let out. Or worse, to be let in. I turned and faced the mirror. My reflection was no longer me. It had stayed behind, watching, smiling. Then it lifted its hand and pointed at the bed. I turned. There was someone lying there. Me. Not asleep. Eyes wide open. Lips moving. Whispering something I couldn't hear. I crept closer and the figure blinked. My face blinked and spoke. This is how it starts. Suddenly the mirror shattered on its own. The lights blew out. The room plunged into total darkness. I reached out blindly, heart pounding. I wasn't alone anymore. Something was breathing beside me. Cold fingers brushed my arm. I ran for the wall crack, prying at it, digging my nails into it until my fingers bled. Then I fell. I don't remember landing. I woke up in a different room. Smaller. Dirt walls. A single candle burning. And scrawled all over the floor were Polaroids. Hundreds of them. Me. The old man. Others, young, old, men, women, all with the same vacant, screaming expressions. The whisper returned. This time inside my head. You're not the first. You won't be the last. I looked up. The candle flickered out. And in the dark, I felt someone step behind me. Let's move on to the next one. I live in a rural town where the nights are quiet and the roads go dark by 9 p.m. People here still lock their doors not because of crime, but out of habit. Nothing ever really happens, until the knocking started. It was always the same, 3 slow knocks on my front door. Always at midnight. Always from someone I could never see. The first time I thought it was a prank. I checked the peephole, no one there. I opened the door slowly, bat in hand, but the porch was empty. No footsteps, no car driving off. Just silence and the cold breath of midnight air. I locked up and went back to bed. The second night it happened again. Same time. 3 knocks. This time I stayed in bed and ignored it. But when I woke up the next morning, there were muddy footprints on my porch, barefoot. They led up to the door and didn't lead away. By the 3rd night, I set up my phone to record. Midnight came. 3 knocks. I watched the video in the morning. There was no one there. But the door moved like someone was pressing against it from the other side. And then, just before the video ended, I heard something on the recording, barely a whisper. Let me in. I'm cold. I started asking around. Quietly. One old man at the diner went pale when I mentioned the knocking. Don't open the door, he said. That's not a person. Not anymore. He told me about a local legend, something buried over 100 years ago. A man who froze to death trying to find shelter. People say his soul still roams, knocking on doors in the dead of night, begging to be let inside. But if you open the door, you disappear. Gone. And the next night he uses your face to knock on the next house. I didn't believe it until I got a call from my neighbor across the field. "Hey," she said, "were you at my place last night?" "What?" "There was someone knocking. I saw them through the window. Looked like you." I didn't answer. My throat tightened. I hadn't left the house. That night I didn't sleep. I sat by the door with every light on, holding a knife in my lap. Midnight came. 3 knocks. I shouted, "Go away." But then a voice replied, my own voice, "Please, I live here. I'm locked out." I didn't move. Another knock. Louder. "Let me in," it whispered. "I'm you." I backed away. I didn't sleep at all. Now every night he comes back. Same time. Same knock. Same voice. Sometimes begging. Sometimes screaming. Sometimes laughing in a way that sounds exactly like me. And I know this can't go on forever. One day I'll get too tired. One day I'll forget to lock the door. Or worse, one day I might answer without thinking. I started placing furniture in front of the door. Chairs, shelves, anything heavy. I wasn't just scared anymore. I was losing control. My own voice was knocking every night, and I began to question if it was really mine. I stopped answering phone calls. Stopped looking at myself in the mirror. Because I kept thinking, what if he's already inside? The 4th night, I didn't hear knocking. At first, I thought it was over. Relief washed over me. But at 12:03 a.m., the lights in the house flickered and died. Every single bulb went out at once. And then, the hallway light came on by itself. It was the only light in the house, and it was coming from the back door. That door hadn't been touched in years. I crept through the living room slowly, heart pounding in my ears. As I reached the back door, I could see it, muddy, barefoot prints on the kitchen floor, coming in, not going out. I froze. Didn't move. That's when I heard the whisper again, this time directly behind me, like someone was standing inches from my ear. "Told you I was cold." I spun around, but no one was there. The prints were fresh, still wet. I grabbed my car keys and bolted outside. I didn't pack, didn't think, just drove. I checked into a cheap roadside motel, somewhere about 40 miles out of town. For once, I slept through the night. No knocking, no whispers, nothing. But when I woke up and stepped out of bed, I froze. The floor was wet. A trail of muddy, barefoot prints led from the motel room door to the edge of my bed. They weren't mine. And taped to the inside of the motel mirror was a note, written in smeared black ink. "Running doesn't help. You're already inside. Let's move on to the next one." They told us not to camp past mile marker 12. Locals called it the Hollow Stretch, a remote part of the state park where GPS signals died and compasses spun without reason. It was a running joke among hikers. Go past the 12th mile and the woods start walking with you. We thought it was just folklore. We were wrong. It was me, my cousin Drew, and my friend Marcy. We were experienced hikers, thrill seekers, the type who looked for trails off the map. So naturally, when we reached mile marker 12 and saw the old wooden sign half sunken into the dirt, we laughed and kept going. The air changed almost immediately. It got heavier, quieter, like the forest itself was holding its breath. But we didn't say anything, not until we set up camp and realized something was off. There were no animal sounds, no birds, no crickets, just wind and our own voices echoing too far and too deep. That night we built a fire, joked about ghosts, and passed around a flask. Around midnight, Drew pointed into the trees. "Is someone out there?" We froze. I followed his gaze, but I didn't see anything. Then Marcy whispered, "It's not moving. It's just watching." I saw it too, a figure barely visible in the dark. Not walking, not shifting. Just there, standing behind a tree. We called out. No reply. Drew even threw a rock toward it. Nothing. Eventually it was just gone. We convinced ourselves it was our imagination and went to sleep. But I woke up around 3 a.m. The fire was dead. The tent flap was open. Drew was gone. I called out. No answer. Marcy was still asleep. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside, calling his name into the stillness. That's when I saw the second set of footprints, bare feet. Not Drew's. They led into the woods. I followed. The deeper I went, the more wrong everything felt. Trees bent at impossible angles. The flashlight flickered even though the batteries were new. And then I found Drew. Standing in the clearing, facing away, unmoving. I shouted. He didn't turn. I stepped closer, heart pounding, and put a hand on his shoulder. He turned around, and his face was completely blank. No eyes. No mouth. Just smooth, pale skin stretched where features should have been. I screamed and ran, but every tree looked the same. Every path curved in circles. Eventually, I collapsed near a boulder and passed out from exhaustion. I woke up at dawn, back in the tent. Marcy was gone. So was Drew. But outside the tent, there were 2 pairs of barefoot prints circling the camp over and over again. And on the tree above our fire pit, someone had carved, "Now the forest remembers your face." The message carved into the tree didn't make sense. Now the forest remembers your face. I traced the letters with my fingertips, the wood still fresh, sap bleeding like an open wound. My breath fogged in the morning air, but something felt wrong about the cold. It didn't sting, it clung like something alive. I called out for Marcy again. No response. Just the wind pushing through the trees like it was whispering something too faint to hear. My phone was still dead, no GPS, no signal. I packed what I could and started walking. Any direction. Just away. But the deeper I went, the more the forest seemed to fold in on itself. Trees I swore I passed an hour ago reappeared. A branch with a knot shaped like an eye showed up again. I tested the theory. Marked it with my knife. 10 minutes later, I found it again. My mark was still fresh. I wasn't going anywhere. Then I started seeing the faces. At first just glimpses, something staring from between branches. Then clearer. Dozens of faces half formed in the bark, their eyes closed like they were dreaming. Some were smooth like Drew's, blank and featureless. Others had contorted mouths, twisted in silent screams. That's when I heard Marcy's voice. Soft, familiar. Over here. I turned. She stood in the clearing ahead, barefoot, eyes wide, smiling in a way that didn't look quite right. I ran to her, but as I got closer, I saw it. Her feet weren't touching the ground. Her arms hung limp by her sides. And her mouth never moved as she spoke. Stay. The forest knows you now. It's already inside. I backed away, but the trees behind me had grown tighter, closing the path. The forest was hurting me, pushing me toward something. And just beyond Marcy was a massive hollow tree. A doorway in its trunk, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. She pointed at it, still smiling, still floating. I turned to run, but everything blurred. My legs went numb. My body didn't feel like mine anymore. As I collapsed to the ground, I heard her whisper again, closer this time inside my mind. The first night it watches, the second night it learns, the third night you stay. Then everything went dark. Let's move on to the next one. It was supposed to be a routine late-night shift at the local radio station. Just me, the equipment, and the midnight playlist. The station, WFMK, was a relic, old vinyl analog dials, and a tiny studio on the edge of town. I liked the solitude. No calls, no interruptions. Just music and the occasional late-night caller. That night, though, everything changed. Around 2 a.m., static began to creep through the speakers. Not the usual hiss or crackle. This was different. Low, rhythmic, almost like breathing. I tried to adjust the controls, but nothing helped. Then the microphone picked up something, whispers. Barely audible, but unmistakable. At first, I thought it was a prank call or interference from a nearby station. But the whispers weren't words, they were sounds. Groans, gasps like a crowd trapped underground. Suddenly, the broadcast cut to dead air for almost 30 seconds. Then the speakers crackled back on, and a voice came through. Slow, deliberate, chilling. I'm still here. I've never left. The studio lights flickered. The controls spun wildly, knobs turning on their own. I grabbed the mic to cut the broadcast, but the voice spoke again. This is my last broadcast. You're the only one who can hear me. Don't look outside. Don't answer the phone. Don't open the door. My heart hammered as the voice faded into static. I tried to call for help, but my phone had no signal. The door to the studio creaked open behind me. I wasn't alone. I froze, staring at the slowly opening door. The studio was dead silent except for the soft creak of the hinges. My hands trembled as I reached for the light switch, but the bulb above flickered and died. Darkness swallowed the room, save for the pale glow of the equipment screens. Who's there? I whispered, clutching the mic like a lifeline. No answer. Then, through the static-filled speakers, that voice returned, closer this time, whispering urgently. Don't turn around. Not yet. I swallowed hard and forced myself not to look behind. The air felt heavy, as if the darkness itself was pressing in. Suddenly, a cold breath brushed my neck. I spun around, but the room was empty, or so it seemed. On the far side of the studio, the window was fogged over. Something scratched at the glass, long, uneven marks like fingernails scraping. The voice crackled again through the speakers, louder now. They're outside, watching, waiting. Panic clawed at me, but the broadcast was still live. I couldn't just run without warning whoever was out there. I grabbed the mic and whispered into it, if anyone's listening, stay inside. Don't open your doors. Static roared through the speakers. Then silence. The studio door slammed shut. The locks clicked. I was trapped. And then the equipment screens all went black, except one. A camera feed flickered on, showing the station's front entrance. Standing in the dark parking lot was a figure, tall, shadowed, face hidden. It raised a hand and knocked, not 3 times, not slowly, but in a rapid, pounding rhythm. The voice whispered one last time through the speakers. It's not them you should fear. It's what they bring. The lights went out completely. The darkness was suffocating. I fumbled for my phone, hoping for a signal, but the screen stayed blank. No bars. No service. Just black. The pounding on the door grew louder, more frantic. My breath came in short gasps. I could feel the air shift like something was creeping closer, something not quite human. Suddenly, the monitors flickered back on. The camera feed showed the figure at the door, but now more faces appeared behind it, dozens of shadowy shapes with glowing eyes, pressed close together like a nightmare crowd. I heard whispers in the static, growing louder, faster. Voices overlapping, unintelligible but filled with rage and sorrow. I ran to the emergency exit, but the door wouldn't budge. I tried the windows. Locked. Sealed tight. The voices on the speakers became clearer. Join us. It's your turn now. I backed away, heart hammering, and tripped over a cable. The mic fell and cracked on the floor. The room plunged into silence. Then, lightning flashed outside, illuminating the window just enough for me to see the faces clearly. Their eyes were hollow pits. Their mouths stretched unnaturally wide, grinning in impossible shapes. One by one, they pressed their hands against the glass, long, spindly fingers leaving smears like blood. A final whisper echoed through the speakers. "We've been waiting for your voice." And the broadcast cut off. The next morning, the station was silent. No calls, no broadcasts, just the faint hum of dead equipment. When the morning crew arrived, the studio door was locked from the inside. They never found me. All that remained was the cracked microphone on the floor, and a single message playing on a loop through the speakers. "I'm still here. And now so are they. Let's move on to the next one." It started as a dare. A group of friends at a late-night party decided to try the elevator game. An urban legend said to transport you to another dimension if you follow a strict sequence of elevator stops in a tall building. The rules were simple. Enter the elevator alone. Press the floors in this order: 4, 2, 6, 2, 10, 5, 1. At floor 5, a mysterious woman is supposed to enter. If no one gets on, you have failed and must exit immediately. If the woman enters, don't speak to her or look at her. She will take you to the other dimension. Jake, always the skeptic, volunteered first. He pressed the buttons carefully, heart pounding. The elevator stopped at 4, then 2, then 6. Floor 2 again. 10, 5. The doors slid open and a woman stepped inside. She was pale, her eyes empty and dark. She didn't speak or look at Jake. The elevator began to rise again and the lights flickered. Jake's skin felt icy cold. Suddenly, the elevator jerked violently and plunged downward. When the doors opened on the lobby floor, Jake was gone. His friends panicked. They called security. The cameras showed the elevator stopping at every floor. Then the doors opened and closed several times by themselves. No sign of Jake. The next night, Sarah, another friend, decided to try the game, hoping to find Jake or prove the story was fake. She followed the sequence. At floor 5, the woman appeared again, but this time she whispered, "You shouldn't be here." The elevator stopped abruptly between floors. The lights went out. Sarah's phone showed static, then a flash of a dark hallway filled with shadows reaching toward her. The elevator jolted back to life, and the doors opened on an empty, abandoned floor that wasn't on the building directory. The lights flickered, revealing peeling wallpaper and cracked mirrors that distorted her reflection, showing her not alone, but surrounded by countless shadowy figures staring with hollow eyes. Sarah tried to escape, but the elevator doors slammed shut behind her. The only way out was to play the game backwards and face the woman one last time. Sarah's breath came fast and shallow as the elevator's faded lights flickered overhead. The ancient floor she'd stepped onto was silent except for the faint hum of forgotten machinery. The walls peeled like dead skin, and the mirrors reflected not her face, but twisted shadows dancing just behind her. She glanced at the elevator buttons. They were still lit, but the sequence was reversed now. 151022624. Her heart pounded as she pressed 1. The elevator groaned, its cables creaking like bones. The doors slid shut slowly, trapping her in. Suddenly, a whisper echoed, low and menacing. "You can't leave until I say." The lights dimmed further. A cold breath brushed her neck. Sarah spun around. The woman was there. Pale as death, eyes hollow, lips cracked into a cruel smile. "Do you want to go home?" the woman hissed. Sarah swallowed her fear and whispered, "Yes." The woman extended a hand, beckoning. Shadows spilled from the corners, closing in. Sarah stepped forward, reaching for the hand. The elevator jolted violently. The lights exploded in a blaze of white. When Sarah opened her eyes, she was back in the lobby, alone, shaken, but free. But as she glanced down, her reflection in the shiny floor was wrong. Her eyes were empty black holes. Sarah stumbled out of the building into the cold night air, heart pounding, desperate to feel normal again. The doors behind her closed with a heavy thud, as if sealing away whatever darkness followed her. She checked her phone. Signal was back, messages from worried friends flooding in. Relief washed over her. She was safe. But then a text arrived from an unknown number. "You played the game. Now it plays with you." Sarah's reflection in the cracked screen flickered, and for a split second, her eyes were the same hollow void she'd seen in the elevator. She dropped the phone. Behind her, the building's elevator dinged softly, and in the shadowed lobby, the pale woman waited, smiling. Days passed, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. Shadows lingered at the edge of her vision, and every mirror, no matter how small, reflected those empty black eyes staring back. She stopped looking at herself altogether. Her phone kept buzzing with messages from the unknown number, each one more disturbing than the last. "We're closer than you think. Look behind you. The game never ends." One night, unable to bear the silence, Sarah checked her reflection one last time, only to see the pale woman standing right behind her, lips curled into that same cruel smile. Sarah spun around. The room was empty. But from that night on, the elevator dinged softly at her apartment building's lobby every midnight, doors opening, closing, but no one ever stepping out. And Sarah? She stopped answering calls, stopped leaving her apartment. Because deep down, she knew the game wasn't over. It had just begun. Weeks later, Sarah's apartment was empty. No one knew where she went. But sometimes, late at night, neighbors swear they hear the elevator bell ring in her building. The doors slide open with a whisper, and a pale woman steps out. No one ever sees where she goes. And if you ever hear the elevators ding at midnight, remember, some games don't end. They only wait for the next player. Let's move on to the next one. When Lisa accepted the night manager job at the old Elmwood Hotel, she thought it would be just another quiet gig. The place was a faded relic from the 1920s, full of peeling wallpaper and creaky floorboards. But the pay was good and the solitude suited her. On her first night, she was told to keep an eye on room 304. The door was always locked and guests avoided it. The previous manager said something about the portrait. Lisa laughed it off as hotel superstition. Curious, she found the master key and opened room 304. Inside was a large oil painting, a portrait of a stern-looking woman in Victorian dress. The eyes seemed almost lifelike, staring right at Lisa as she entered. The room was empty, cold, and smelled faintly of decay. That night, as Lisa patrolled the halls, she heard soft footsteps following her. Whenever she turned, no one was there. Then the whispers began, faint, unintelligible voices coming from behind the portrait. The next evening, she noticed the woman's eyes in the painting had changed. Now they seemed to track her movements, growing darker, more intense. One night, she swore she saw the woman in the portrait blink. Lisa's curiosity turned to fear when she discovered the hotel's archives. Room 304 had been the scene of a tragic murder a century ago. The woman in the portrait was Eleanor Whitmore, who vanished mysteriously after her husband was found dead in that very room. The last entry in the old journal said, "She watches from the frame, waiting for someone to take her place." The whispers grew louder each night, calling Lisa's name, begging her to stay. One stormy night, Lisa woke to find the portrait missing from the wall. On the floor lay a single pale handprint, and her own reflection staring back from the glossy paint. Lisa's heart pounded as she stared at the empty wall where the portrait had hung moments before. The room felt colder now, like the air itself had thickened, pressing against her skin. She reached out tentatively toward the floor, fingertips brushing against the pale handprint. It was slick and cold, almost like fresh paint. Her reflection shimmered in the glossy surface, but it wasn't her face staring back. It was the woman's, Eleanor's. A sudden whisper echoed through the room. "Stay with me." Lisa spun around, but the room was empty. The door slammed shut behind her with a deafening bang. Panic surged. She rattled the doorknob. It was locked tight. Desperately, she tried to remember if she had the master key. It was nowhere in her pockets. The whispers grew louder, circling her like a swarm. Words became clearer. "Take my place. Forever." From the corner of her eye, Lisa saw movement, a shadow detaching from the darkness, forming into Eleanor's ghostly figure. Her Victorian dress billowed as if underwater, eyes hollow yet pleading. Lisa stumbled backward, tripping over a chair. Eleanor reached out, pale fingers grazing Lisa's arm. A chill exploded through her body, paralyzing her. The last thing Lisa saw before darkness claimed her was the painting slowly reappearing on the wall, its eyes alive, watching. Days later, the hotel's new manager found room 304 locked tight. No one had seen Lisa since her last shift. When the door was finally forced open, the room was empty, except for the portrait, now hanging perfectly in place, its eyes calm and lifeless once more. But if you look closely, you'll notice something strange. The woman in the painting no longer has Eleanor's face. Instead, it's Lisa's. After the discovery, rumors spread quickly among the hotel staff. Some claimed to hear faint whispers coming from room 304. Others reported seeing a fleeting shadow near the hallway late at night. The hotel guests grew uneasy, and reservations for that floor dropped to nearly zero. The new manager, uneasy but skeptical, decided to investigate further. He called in a local historian who specialized in the hotel's dark past. Together, they uncovered a chilling truth. Eleanor Whitmore was rumored to have been involved in occult rituals, trying to bind her soul to the portrait to escape death. Legend said the portrait trapped her spirit, and whoever dared to stare too long risked becoming the next prisoner. That night, the historian stayed in room 304. As the clock struck midnight, the air grew icy. The portrait's eyes seemed to shimmer, and the whispers returned. Suddenly, the room's temperature plummeted, and the door slammed shut. The historian's screams echoed through the halls until silence swallowed them. When staff rushed in the next morning, the historian was gone. The portrait hung silently, but now it carried two faces, one old, one new, both trapped forever behind the glass. No one has seen Lisa since that night. But sometimes, guests who stay near room 304 report waking up to find the portrait's eyes watching them, waiting. Because the portrait never releases its prisoners. It only waits for the next soul to take their place. Let's move on to the next one. Marcus was a night driver for a rideshare company in a city that never truly slept. The streets were mostly empty after midnight, and he liked the quiet, until one night changed everything. At 2:13 a.m., Marcus received a pickup request from an address on a deserted street. When he arrived, the sidewalk was empty. No sign of a passenger. Then he heard a soft tap on the back window. He glanced in the rearview mirror and saw a woman sitting silently in the back seat. Pale, eyes fixed straight ahead, lips pressed tight. She wore an old-fashioned dress, stained and torn, like she'd stepped out of another century. Marcus tried to ask where she wanted to go, but she didn't respond. The GPS started moving on its own, guiding him through winding, unfamiliar streets. As he drove, the city around him began to change. The buildings crumbled, the streetlights flickered, and the night grew colder. The woman's silence was deafening. Finally, the car stopped in front of an abandoned cemetery. The woman turned toward him, and for the first time, her lips moved, but no sound came out. Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but she reached forward, gripping his wrist with a grip like iron. Her eyes darkened, and a voice echoed inside his head. "You're not leaving." The car door slammed shut by itself. The engine died. Marcus was trapped. Behind the woman, shadowy figures emerged from the mist, their faces twisted in silent screams. And Marcus realized the woman wasn't just a passenger. She was the last ride for the restless dead. Marcus's breath fogged in the freezing air as the shadowy figures closed in, their hollow eyes locked on him with an unbearable hunger. The woman's grip tightened, and a cold seeped into his bones, as if the grave itself was reaching out. Desperately, he tried to start the engine, but the car remained lifeless. The radio crackled, then burst into static, until a voice, distant and eerie, whispered through the speakers. "No escape. The ride has just begun." The mist thickened, swallowing the cemetery and the city beyond. The streetlights flickered out one by one, leaving Marcus alone in a world where time seemed to stand still. Suddenly, the woman turned and pointed toward the old chapel at the far end of the graveyard. Marcus felt compelled to follow. His feet moved on their own, the grip on his wrist like a chain. Inside the chapel, dusty pews lined the walls, and a single candle flickered on the altar. Shadows danced across the cracked stained glass windows, figures from another era frozen in color and glass. The woman stepped forward, her voice finally breaking the silence. "You belong here now." Before Marcus could react, the chapel doors slammed shut. The candle went out. Darkness consumed him. When dawn broke, the car was found abandoned on the roadside, doors locked, engine cold. Marcus was never seen again. But every so often, on misty nights, drivers report picking up a silent passenger, pale, with eyes that hold 1,000 lost souls, and hear a whisper through the radio. The ride never ends. Weeks passed, but Marcus never returned. His phone went straight to voicemail, and no one could trace his last ride. The rideshare company grew uneasy, especially when drivers started reporting strange experiences. Unexplained cold spots, flickering radio static, and sightings of a pale woman who never spoke. One driver, Jamie, claimed she picked up the same silent passenger Marcus had described. As Jamie drove, the woman's eyes seemed to glow faintly in the dark, and the GPS rerouted her to places that didn't exist on any map. Frightened, Jamie tried to speak, but the woman's lips moved without sound. Then the radio crackled and that chilling voice whispered, "Join us." Jamie swerved, losing control. When she looked back, the passenger seat was empty. Desperate for answers, Jamie dug into the city's history and uncovered a grim tale. Decades ago, a mysterious crash had claimed the lives of a woman and her child on those same streets Marcus had driven. Since then, drivers spoke of a ghostly passenger who haunted the night, trapped between worlds, seeking company on endless rides. The story spread, and soon the city's late-night drivers began to dread the silent rides, the ones with no destination, no words, and the eerie feeling that the dead were watching. One foggy night, Jamie accepted a ride from an unknown requester. The app simply displayed a blinking icon, no name, no address. She hesitated but tapped accept. As she arrived at the pickup spot, a figure slipped into the back seat, the pale woman silent as ever. The GPS lit up, guiding Jamie through winding streets shrouded in mist. The radio hissed with static until the voice whispered, "Welcome back. You belong with us now." Jamie gripped the wheel, trying to shake the growing dread. Suddenly, the rearview mirror reflected not her own face but Marcus's, eyes wide with terror. She slammed on the brakes. The car jolted and came to a stop in front of the old chapel, the same one Marcus never left. The doors locked themselves. The engine died. From the mist, shadowy figures approached, hands reaching in silence. Jamie's screams echoed as the radio burst to life one last time, the chilling whisper filling the night. The ride never ends. The next morning, Jamie's car was found empty on the roadside, doors locked, engine cold. Her phone lay on the seat, playing one final message on loop. "You're never truly alone." And somewhere on a lonely street, the silent passenger waits for her next ride. Let's move on to the next one. In a small, forgotten town stood an ancient clock shop run by a man named Elias. His clocks were unlike any others, intricate, beautiful, and said to possess strange powers. People whispered that Elias could stop time itself. Curious and skeptical, a young journalist named Mia decided to investigate. She visited the shop late one evening, the air thick with the scent of old wood and oil. Elias greeted her with a knowing smile. "Looking for answers?" he asked. Mia nodded and asked about the rumors. Elias's eyes darkened. "Every clock here holds a fragment of time, moments trapped forever. But tampering with time comes at a price." Ignoring the warning, Mia asked to see the rarest clock. Elias led her to a dusty back room where a grand clock tower stood, its hands frozen at midnight. As Mia touched the clock, the room shifted. Time warped, minutes stretched, then snapped. She felt herself pulled into a different world, where moments from the past and future collided. Suddenly, the clock's hands began to move backward, faster and faster. Mia tried to let go, but Elias's voice echoed, "You've become part of the clock now, trapped in time." The shop vanished, replaced by endless ticking, shadows of people frozen mid-motion, forever caught between seconds. And somewhere the clock tower waits for its next visitor. Mia's heart pounded as she realized she was no longer in the clock shop, or in any place she recognized. The world around her was fragmented, like shards of glass floating in a void. People stood frozen mid-action, a child reaching for a toy, a couple mid-embrace, a man trapped mid-step. Their faces were blank as if drained of life. The ticking grew louder, echoing in her chest. Time wasn't just paused, it was broken, fractured, trapped in Elias's creation. Desperate to escape, Mia searched for the clock tower. The hands continued spinning backward, pulling her deeper into the chaos of lost moments. She saw flashes, her own past, mistakes she wished she could undo, regrets that now felt like chains. Then Elias appeared, his eyes cold but not unkind. "You must fix the clock," he said. "Set the hands to move forward again. But beware, the cost is your own time. Every second you steal from the clock is one less in your life." Mia hesitated, but the void closed in. She reached for the clock's hands and twisted them forward. The world snapped. She was back in the shop, gasping for air. The clock tower's hands now moved steadily, time restored. But something was wrong. Looking at her reflection in the dusty mirror, Mia saw her hair was streaked with gray, decades older than before. Elias smiled sadly. "Time is precious. You've borrowed mine, but now it's taken from you." Mia staggered back from the mirror, her hand trembling as she touched the strands of gray hair. Panic swelled in her chest. How could so much time have passed when she had only felt moments inside the shop? Elias stepped closer, his eyes reflecting the endless gears turning behind him. "The clock doesn't just trap time, it trades it. You have freed yourself, but the price is your life's hours." She tried to speak, to bargain, but the old man's voice softened. "You have a choice. Use the time you have wisely, or risk becoming part of the clock forever." Days turned into weeks, but Mia felt time slipping away faster than normal. Moments blurred, memories faded. She watched friends age while she seemed trapped in a shrinking bubble of existence. One night she returned to the shop, but it was gone. Where the building once stood was an empty lot, overgrown with weeds. In her pocket she found a small, intricate clock, Elias's gift. It ticked steadily, but every tick felt heavier, like a heartbeat counting down. Mia understood now. She was part of Elias's secret, a prisoner of time itself, bound to the clock's endless ticking. And somewhere in a forgotten corner of the world, the clock waits for its next visitor. As the days passed, Mia's connection to the world weakened. Time outside moved on without her, yet she felt every moment slipping from her grasp. The clock in her pocket was a constant reminder, each tick a second stolen from her life. One evening, desperate for answers, Mia clutched the clock tightly and whispered, "Is there a way to break free?" The hands on the clock stopped. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then a voice, faint but clear, echoed inside her mind. "To undo the price, you must find another willing to take your place." Horror washed over her. The cycle was endless. Someone else had to become trapped so she might be free. Mia realized that Elias had never been a prisoner of time, but its keeper, forever harvesting souls who dared to tamper with the clock. With trembling resolve, Mia hid the clock deep in a forgotten drawer and vowed never to speak of it again. But deep down she knew the clock's ticking would never stop. And one day someone else would find the shop, and the price of time would be paid once more. Years later, in a quiet town, a curious traveler stumbled upon a forgotten shop nestled between crumbling buildings. The sign read simply, "Elias's Clocks." Inside, the air was thick with dust and the steady ticking of countless timepieces. On a shelf lay a small clock, its hands moving steadily, waiting. And as the traveler reached out to touch it, the softest whisper filled the air. "Time is never free. Let's move on to the next one." In the heart of a forgotten city stood an old, crumbling building known as the Greystone Apartments. For years, tenants whispered about strange voices, soft, eerie whispers coming from the walls late at night. No one knew their source, but those who heard them said the voices seemed to speak directly to their deepest fears. Emma moved into Greystone looking for a fresh start. The rent was cheap and she liked the old charm of the place. But on her first night, she heard it, a low, breathy whisper coming from the cracked plaster near her bedroom wall. At first she thought it was the wind, but the whisper grew clearer, shaping into words only she could hear. "You're not alone." Emma tried to ignore it, but the whispers followed her, at work, in the shower, even when she was alone in her apartment. They knew things she never told anyone, her childhood secrets, her fears, her regrets. Desperate, she asked her neighbors. They all had the same story. The whispers started the night before a tenant vanished. One evening, the whispers became a chilling warning. Leave before it's too late. Emma packed her bags, but as she turned off the lights, the whispers changed, urgent, pleading. Stay with us forever. The next morning, Emma was gone. Her apartment was empty, except for the faint sound of whispers echoing through the walls. Days passed since Emma disappeared, but the Greystone apartments continued to hold their secrets tightly. Rumors spread fast. Some tenants moved out overnight, others locked their doors and refused to speak of what they heard. A local journalist named Lucas caught wind of the story and decided to investigate. He rented the apartment next to Emma's, determined to uncover the truth behind the whispers. The first night, Lucas heard it too, the faint breath of voices slipping through the cracked plaster. Unlike Emma, he was prepared. He recorded the sounds, hoping to analyze them later. The whispers were fragmented but unmistakable, repeating phrases like, "Help me," "Trapped inside," "Don't listen." As nights wore on, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Lucas began to see shadows flicker just beyond his vision, faces pressed against the walls, mouths moving in silent screams. One night, Lucas found an old journal tucked inside a loose brick near the whispering wall. The pages were yellowed and brittle, filled with frantic entries from a tenant decades ago named Margaret. Margaret wrote of the building's dark past, how it was built over an old asylum rumored to have been shut down after a fire trapped patients inside. She claimed the walls absorbed the suffering and madness, imprisoning the souls of those who died there. Her last entry was a chilling warning. The walls whisper the truth, but the truth will consume you. Don't answer them. Don't let them in. Lucas's skepticism wavered. He started to feel the whispers not just as sounds, but as a presence crawling beneath his skin, unraveling his thoughts. One night, as the clock struck midnight, the whispers stopped suddenly. The silence was worse than the noise. Then a voice louder than the rest called his name, clear, desperate, and haunting. "Lucas." He followed the voice to the wall where the bricks were loose. As he reached to pry one free, the air grew icy. The whispers exploded into a roar, filling his mind with visions of terror. Faces twisted in agony, endless screams trapped behind stone and plaster. Suddenly, the wall gave way, revealing a hidden, narrow staircase spiraling down into darkness. With no other choice, Lucas descended. The steps led to a forgotten underground chamber, walls covered in faded symbols and chains rusted by time. Whispers turned to wails as shadows danced in the flickering light of his flashlight. In the center lay a broken mirror, cracked like shattered time itself. As Lucas looked closer, he saw not his reflection, but countless faces screaming silently, trapped behind the glass. A cold hand grabbed his wrist. The last thing Lucas heard was a whisper, "Join us." Lucas jerked his arm free, heart hammering, but the cold grip lingered, a ghostly touch that seemed to freeze the air around him. The shadows flickered violently, as if the chamber itself was alive and breathing. He backed away from the cracked mirror, stumbling over broken chains and forgotten bones scattered across the floor. The whispers swirled into a frenzy, voices overlapping in a maddening chorus of despair and rage. Desperate to escape, Lucas searched for a way out, but the chamber seemed endless, twisting like a labyrinth beneath the building. Each doorway he tried led him deeper into darkness, the air growing thicker, heavier, as if suffocating hope itself. Suddenly, the voices coalesced into one chilling command. Stay. Forever. Lucas's flashlight flickered and died. He was plunged into total blackness. Panic clawed at his mind as he groped blindly, trying to find an exit. Then, faintly at first, a soft glow appeared, emanating from the broken mirror. Through the fractured glass, Lucas glimpsed a twisted reflection of himself, eyes hollow, mouth locked in a silent scream. A cold voice whispered from the darkness, "You belong to the wall now." Lucas screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the endless void. Back in the apartment above, the whispers resumed, softer but no less haunting. The Greystone Apartments had claimed another soul. The Greystone Apartments fell silent, but the walls still whisper. If you listen closely near room 7, you might hear a new voice, calling your name. Because the wall never lets go.